This afternoon I wanted to go over the artistic expression guidelines for Parks and Recreation for both Balboa Park and the beach area. I want to also clarify, artistic expression also includes not only individuals conducting the traditional artistic expression like busking, juggling, making of art, but also religious activity, religious speech, and political speech. So it really, I want to make sure that everyone understands it encompasses all sort of First Amendment speech. Give you a little background. Expressive activity has existed in our parks, especially in Balboa Park and the coast for many, many years. And when we experienced COVID in 2020, not only did that type of activity completely stop within our parks, but as we all know, much activity anywhere truly stopped. Here in Balboa Park, those of you who have walked through Balboa Park now or years past may be more familiar with what we used to call the entertainer program. That would primarily be musicians, jugglers, and other performers performing on designated spaces through a free monthly lottery here in Balboa Park. In reviewing the entertainer program as the city came out of the pandemic, the Parks Department discontinued that program, and it's currently pending a review through the municipal code. The department plans to propose amendments to the current municipal code to clarify when solicitation, performances, and the sale of merchandise on public property are protected by the First Amendment. In addition, the amendments would allow the public to use the parks without activity that are unreasonably interferences with health, safety, and its scenic and natural character. For example, we want to make sure that we're able to preserve the landscape, the turf, the grass, the historic components of Balboa Park, the natural elements along the coast. So all of those are being kept in mind. While the department is actively reviewing the current municipal code, we will be providing locations not only here in Balboa Park, but also in the beach areas for artistic expression to continue. In the coastal area, we are going to be proposing 2 to 3 sites in each beach community, and in Balboa Park, we are proposing to provide 26 sites. Give you a little historic background. The former entertainer program provided 25 spots throughout Balboa Park for individuals to conduct artistic expression. Along with that, there were guidelines. All those guidelines were attached to existing municipal codes. And we were able to do that through San Diego Charter 55, which provides the director to provide programs and guidelines within parks. The new expressive activity guidelines, we are providing 1 additional site, 26 sites total throughout the park. And we are also considering, because we did hear loud and clear the public comment at the Balboa Park Committee in regards to the desire to have amplification and also maybe larger sites that would accommodate more active entertainment. So we are currently reviewing how we could look at areas that would not be negatively impactful to the institutions, the public, reverberation in the buildings, while still providing an opportunity for 1 or 2 sites to have amplifications. So we're currently reviewing that, and we're also looking at locations that we could expand from the 4x8 site that we are looking at. In June of 2022 was the implementation of the sidewalk vending ordinance. In that, it did not allow vending in areas of Balboa Park and throughout the gas lamp and the coastal areas.
So anywhere people want to be.
As a part of that, in the new municipal code in sidewalk vending, it talked about the non-applicability in the sidewalk vending ordinance. And in that, it specifically talks about any vending or individual engaged solely in artistic performances, free speech, political or petitioning activities, or engaged solely in vending of items constituting expressive activity protected by First Amendment, such as newspapers, leaflets, pamphlets, bumper stickers, or buttons. As you can see, there's a lot that occurs in Balboa Park and other areas of the city that isn't included in that definition. So what we found is there was a limitation and a need for more clarification, both for those conducting artistic expression and for police and park rangers, those of us who are left to enforcing and upholding those guidelines within the parks. So that's the reason why we are currently working with the city attorney's office to help us clarify what those definitions are and how we can expand and clarify that information. What you can, as we move forward, if you could think about that the first step, we are going to be utilizing a phase 1 and a phase 2 approach. Phase 1 is utilizing what we previously used in Balboa Park, which is Chapter 55, and creating guidelines within parks attached to existing municipal codes. And phase 2 would be the updating of the actual ordinances that allow us to clarify what artistic expression is within our parks, including, of course, religious activity, free speech, and political speech. The locations that we are going to be utilizing both now in phase 1 and phase 2, we are considering fire lanes, ADA accesses, walkways, public health and safety, and we also want to make sure that just the general public who are coming here for a picnic and want to recreate and enjoy the park in a quiet space, that they too have the opportunity to enjoy the park, while also preserving the natural resources within each one of our park spaces. We also want to make sure that the artistic expression that is being conducted within our parks is not blocking any accesses. And anyone who is in these areas, they will be directed to locations that aren't currently being occupied. And if they don't want to move to those other locations, we will encourage them to move voluntarily. Here in Balboa Park, we looked at areas, and we will continue to look at areas in the coastal zone that will incorporate the California Code sections 50 or 503. This allows the fire marshal and the fire department to designate areas that are fire lanes based on the California Fire Code. As you can see here along the Prado, there's a clear delineation and a need for fire access and emergency response. And we are currently working with the lifeguard services, police department, and the fire department in those coastal zones and coastal communities to get feedback, as well as the communities within those areas, to make sure that we are considering areas that won't create any negative impact to both the community, businesses, while still providing opportunities for artistic expression. The expressive activity guidelines, the highlights, it's going to be a first come, first serve for each of the locations, and there won't be a lottery system, which there was in the past. Each one of the sites will be labeled with the corresponding site number. Sites are limited, will be limited initially to 4 by 8. We are looking at 8 by 8 or larger for some specific sites that make sense, and again, aren't blocking access and aren't blocking ADA or other pedestrian accesses. Hours that we want to conduct this activity is between the hours of 10 a.m. and 7 a.m. This provides opportunities for maintenance, deliveries, and it really is the areas and the times that the public is most active, especially here in Balboa Park, and also in the beach area. Sidewalk vending will continue to be enforced per the municipal code, and this includes illegal food and non-expressive activity and the sale of merchandise. We'll be creating a website that provides maps and guidelines for each one of our areas that we'll be rolling out for this first phase, and we'll be able to utilize it and update it as the municipal code updates are implemented. We'll also be able to have all that information available in the Park and Rec website on the City of San Diego website. We'll also be providing and handing out brochures, as well as providing and posting maps, both here in Balboa Park and in the coastal areas to help in the educational process. We'll be conducting a 30-day educational period, beginning right after this, right after we conclude the board meeting, in all the areas that will be impacted, Balboa Park and the coastal area. We are providing the Balboa Park Ranger email for individuals to reach out to us, provide information, or if they have any questions, they can also reach out to us. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide you with this information, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Good. Why don't we do this way? We've got quite a bit of written public comment, so please stick around, Mike. And he'll be here to answer your questions. So I'd like to get through some of this public comment. We have quite a few slips here, and I want to give everybody respect their time. So do we have any written public comment?
No written public comments, just the speaker slips that were presented to you.
Okay, great. All right, so then, is anyone here in the room who's presented a speaker slip? We need to have your speaker slip if you're going to talk. So I'm going to kind of go through what they've handed me here. So the first person is Catherine Douglas. You have 3 minutes. Yes. Then Marcella Teran is next. Do you want to be on deck?
Good afternoon. I'm Catherine Douglas. I'm a founding member of the Coastal Coalition, which is a group of community leaders from La Jolla, Pacific Beach, Mission Beach, and Ocean Beach. We often speak as city council members on legislative items, but we speak as a unified voice. My concern, I don't happen to use the parks and beaches very often, but our parks and beaches belong to everyone in San Diego, as well as visitors. And the people from out east, where it's hotter in the summer, they need to get to our beach. It's not it doesn't belong to those of us who live in the coastal area. It belongs to everyone. And I have watched, first of all, we had a 10-month delay after Balboa, the inland communities, the sidewalk bending ordinance took effect. We waited another 10 months, and during that time, we watched a lot of destruction to the infrastructure of the parks. We've lost grass. A lot of it's dirt now, and we understand that the ordinance is going to be tightened up, and I hope that's done quickly. We're working with council members. We've met with the mayor's office, and we need to speed that along, and this next iteration of the sidewalk bending ordinance needs to be airtight. Chief Ruiz, we've met with him. His guys are taking the brunt of this because the ordinance hasn't been clear. And I also think it's important to, I believe there are 500 permitted vendors, but we're also talking about what we call rogue vendors. And those are unpermitted vendors. And that's where the real problem lies. And I hope we want our parks to be safe. We want them to be accessible. We want them to serve the entire county of San Diego and visitors who come here. We get a lot of revenue from people who come to the coastal area that goes into the general fund, TOT taxes, etc. And these are really important things to address as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Marcella, Teran?
Hi, good afternoon. Marcella Teran, also with the Coastal Coalition, and I'm from the Pacific Beach area. Thank you for this opportunity. The reason I'm here today is some of the same reasons Catherine was just talking. I have observed the problems with having vending and creating more of instead of natural beauty that many people come, tourists, residents, come to the coastal areas for, we're seeing a sea of commercialism. Now it has gotten much better, but again, as Catherine mentioned, the ordinance has not been tightened up as much. We haven't had as many people to enforce the present ordinance as it is, and it's caused a lot of confusion. According to the California Coastal Act, street vending blocks public access to the coast. Simple and clear. It removes the oceanfront land, and it removes it from recreation use and prevents tourists and residents from really enjoying the natural beauty. And that's what it's all about, the coastline. So I think commercialism in general does not belong there. And I've also seen that many people have made it very hard for the park and rec people to enforce vending because of the loophole and think of the word, the miscommunication about what truly is expression, artistic expression. So I hope that you will continue to keep the coastline beautiful and enforce anything that is able to keep it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Daniel Neilsen, Kenny Shelton, then Taylor Locke.
Hi, members of the board. Thank you for letting me speak today. And I'm a musician here in Balboa Park, and I have been for the past 7 years. And you know, I really want us to be able to use our amplifiers again. In the past, it's been every spot had a musician with an amplifier, and it wasn't a problem. I mean, everybody kept it down, so you know there was a legitimate respect between most of the people. And when somebody did act out, they were ticketed or asked to turn down or something along those lines. But this is how it's been, you know. And I'm afraid that if we have 2 spots that are allowed amplification, it's not really going to work. For one thing, there'll probably be spots, you know, far away from anybody where nobody wants to come. I think the answer is a decibel meter. At the Balboa Park Board meeting last time, Chris Eddy mentioned that there are other areas in the city that use a decibel meter to regulate the volume levels. And I think he said currently it's 75 decibels at 100 feet. That's just what I remember him saying. And that seems like a better way to do it, rather than just saying, okay, these 2 spots where nobody's gonna come by or allowed to have amplifiers. The problem with not having an amplifier as a musician, a lot of us use tracks. Like I have 40 original songs that I play. And I have backing tracks because I've composed different parts. And I need them behind me when I sing and when I play my instrument in order to have the song come off as I created it. And without an amplifier that's inhibiting, my expression, I can't express that. I'm playing songs that aren't really moving, is what I'm finding. Since May, this has been going on since May. We were allowed to use amps in the past, even though it wasn't part of the regulation. None of the Rangers had problems with it. They would just say, hi, how you doing? Mostly, had a good relationship with most of the Rangers. A lot of them are my friends. And it just seems like it's unfair to musicians that use backing tracks. It's unfair to classical guitarists. Nobody can hear a classical guitarist without an amplifier. You have to be 3 feet away from them. Also, keyboardists can't use, how are they going to play a keyboard without an amplifier? I don't know. And vocalists, I'm a vocalist, and without a microphone, I'll go hoarse within about 20 or 30 minutes. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Kenny Shelton. Then Taylor Locke. And then Chet Harrison.
Hello, my name is Kenny Shelton. I'm a busker from Balboa Park. I'll be talking a few documents of a gentleman who is not here with us. His name is Mitchell A. Walker, who was also a busker in Balboa Park since 2004. He was a didgeridoo player that used to play out there. This is a few of his papers that he would like me to read to you guys here. To whom it concerned, before the COVID era, we had the performers lottery system, which is, in my opinion, worked well until its cancellation on June 4th, 2022, and open to all. The application rule limits one's ability of expression in performing arts. You can perform, but you cannot speak. In a way, it is a form of expression limitation. The ordinance is confusing, saying one thing and allowing another, and not making any sense and sounding somewhat vindicated. No sound of any kind, and yet it's okay if it's kept at a tolerable level. In the past, we were allowed to use amplification, if kept at a certain decibel level, which was acceptable. Over the years, after being open to all, it's gone out of control with complaints throughout the park again. I'm willing to donate another decimal reader to the park rangers and establish in Balboa Park effective by the sounds along the Prado walkway, or perhaps we can monitor ourselves. On the subject of the didgeridoo, I am emphasizing the didgeridoo is a quiet instrument and does not need some form of amplification to be heard in a populated noise emitted region, of course. Application for the instrument was not used 4,000, 40,000 years ago, or in its present day outback Australia, where it is quite a tribal group, ceremonies and traditions that take place. However, some indigenous people of Australia do not use amplification in the cities and in cities to be heard over single drowning notes. So, here are some of his questions. 1, perhaps bring back the lottery system for performing spaces, whoever the location may be. 2, open up Prado Way with returning spaces in some way or form off the lawn area within the fire zone. Monitoring applications with set decibel levels, speakers decorated upwards instead of directly outwards to the audience. I keep my speaker under a chair upward. Some instruments are louder than amplifiers. Perhaps decibel levels of 60 to 75 would be more comfortable, allowing a single brass instrument and drum attaining that decibel level. 5, application permit with rules and regulations to follow and assigned documentation with a period of follow. If any of you guys would like any more documents, he has sent out letters to the public rangers and everything of that sort. Thank you.
Thank you. And then Taylor Locke, Chet Harrison, and Andrea Zinko.
Hello, everybody. I'm I don't know, I've been street performing in Balboa Park in Seaport Village for a few years, but lately.
Excuse me, can you state your name, please?
Taylor Locke.
Thank you.
I've been street performing in Balboa Park and Seaport Village for a few years, but lately it's with all the red tape, it's been taking all the fun out of it. And now with these fancy new 27 spots, 4x8, 8x8, feels like, you know, I have to be more of like a mime trapped in a box, you know, because art, you guys are kind of putting art into, you know, in a 4x8, 8x8 box. I think if you have self-expression and art at a park, that creates the city's culture, and I think a healthy culture is a healthy thing for a city. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, but putting art in boxes like that pigeonholes art, pigeonholes self-expression, and pigeonholes culture. And I don't really agree with it, so that's why I haven't been busking that much lately anymore. And is that 1 minute? 1 minute? All right. But it's just kind of taking all the fun out of it. And because like we're not here to make anyone's days worse. We're not here to try and blow you away with amplification. We're not here to try and like annoy you with like the abortion signs or anything like that. Me personally, I'm trying to make everyone's day better because what I do, I know I can positively influence people's families' lives. I bring families together. I create a good time. People have a great good time, and then, oh, thank you so much. Here's 50 cents. You know, and it's a lasting memory, and they'll take pictures of their kids, and they're like, oh, thank you, we're from out of town, this is so much fun, you know. And so what I want to be able to keep doing that because I know it's a positive thing, and everything seems kind of so dark and gloomy right now. I'm trying to keep doing a positive thing, but it's just hard when I'm getting boxed in, and I kind of don't like that. Sometimes I feel like I should be allowed to street perform and do my thing wherever there's homeless people, you know, sleeping and shooting up and pooping all over the place. Like I should be, I've set up with, next to homeless people before, doing all those things, and the Rangers come and harass me. And it's like, I'm trying to make the place better. This guy's, you know, has explosive diarrhea all over the wall, and he's signing his initials, but he gets nothing. And, oh, sorry, sir, we'll get him out of your living room right now. And it's like, what the heck? You know, like I'm just confused. You know, I'm like, why are we letting this like degeneracy happen, but we're punishing artists and boxing them in? I'm just confused and I'm upset. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Locke. Chet Harrison, and then Andrea Zinko.
Hi, my name's Chet Harrison. I'm a classical guitarist. I've been performing in the park for classical guitar for 12 years, but I've been playing in the park since the 80s. When I started playing in the park, I was playing a Martin steel string guitar behind a banjo player. There was no need for me to have an amplifier. That guitar going like this, boom, 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 right? That's loud enough, it was loud enough. But playing intricate music on a classical guitar is completely different than that. It requires the ability to have dynamics. Okay, so this is a First Amendment issue. That was brought out by Hussein versus Mayor in 2013. Okay, he was Hussein is a violinist, and the case showed that he required amplification for expressiveness with his instrument. What's happened recently? There was 3 of us, classical guitarists, that played regularly in the park. Rude buskers that were too loud drove the other 2 out. It wasn't the Rangers that drove them out, it was these rude buskers that drove them away because they were playing at sports arena levels. Okay? It's completely inappropriate. So, I'm all for having a regulation about amplifiers, but not a ban. Lately, they've been using, San Diego Municipal Code 59.5.0502B as a, administrative, rule against amplification, okay? This is a noise ordinance. It's actually a well-written noise ordinance. If the authorities were to, use this ordinance in the way that it's written, it would probably be adequate on its own, I believe. But they use this as a rule against amplification. I was cited for it. It'll be over next month. And going forward, I would like to see some kind of way where we can have amplified music, because it's just not possible with a classical guitar. And in my opinion, I'm biased, that's the best instrument for Balboa Park. We have natural beauty, playing natural sounding music, right? If it needs to be louder than the ambient noise, which is about 70, 80 decibels, okay, to be heard. If I play less than that, if I have no amplifier on my guitar, it's gonna be less than 70 decibels, and it's not gonna, I'll be invisible. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Andrea, Zinko, Becky Hostetter, I have that correct? And then Martin Stamper.
Again, I'm back here again. Andrea Zinko, President, San Diego's Balboa Park Puppet Guild, we're Hitchcock Puppet Theater Operators. Puppetry actually got its start as busking, believe it or not, all through Italy and Europe. One of the things that fascinates me about San Diego, I've been here since 1976, is the wide variety of performers that we do have in the park. I would hate to see the performers go away myself, just simply for the fact that it adds another level. It's been going on since the 80s. I have friends who come here from New York saying, where is this stuff? What's going on? Because New York Central Park has it. What I actually have is more of a question for our head ranger. In my case, several of our puppeteers travel the park with puppets to promote the shows. That's one of the ways we do it, since we're off the beaten track. There's no signage, nothing that directs people to the Marie Hitchcock Puppet Theater. In the past, they've used the spots in order to help during COVID. But one of my questions is, in the past, we've had some of the rangers who have actually told our puppeteers that they could not do this. And what I would like to see is, many of the institutions used to put tables out in front of the buildings to promote their museums. One in Point, the Model Railroad Museum, of which I'm a board member of, we used to put signboards, we used to have people out, we used to have information tables that we had out in the Prado. So what I would like to see is something in this ordinance to work with the institutions. I don't want to see my puppeteers harassed by the rangers by calling them buskers or telling them that they're going to get fined or arrested because they're doing something on behalf of one of the organizations in the park. We really need that here in Balboa Park. We are very unique in the fact that our institutions are museums, and this is mainly a lot of ways that we can promote ourselves. And again, puppetry got its start being sidewalk vendors and sidewalk performers. And I hope that we can come to a really good middle road where we can have the good performers and keep the bad performers out, but also be able to have the music and everything that has actually given Balboa Park its identity over the last 40-something years that I've been here. Thank you.
Thank you. Becky Hostetter. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly.
That's all right. It's all cheese.
And then Martin Stamper.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Becky Hostetter. I'm a third-generation San Diegan. All of my family are creatives and makers. My father's most recent project is currently on display at the Automotive Museum next door. I have been making and selling my art for decades now, and I was happy to hear that the state of California had passed a law making street vending available, because I really love to connect directly with those who love what I make. However, here in San Diego, the application of that law is instead being used to punish and prevent street vending. Just yesterday, park rangers were out at Veterans Park in Ocean Beach, probably at the urging of local businesses, to specifically harass vendors. Apparently, they were acting as art police and ticketing and citing anyone who had anything that was not a painting. There's nothing in the vending rules that justifies this action, and it should stop immediately. 2 weeks ago, also at Veterans Park in Ocean Beach, rangers claimed to vendors that they needed to move 500 feet from any lifeguard tower, even those that were not in use. The rules clearly state it's 100 feet, not 500 feet, and vendors were on the other side of a seawall and a boardwalk, thus they were not inhibiting lifeguards in any way possible. This behavior by rangers is outrageous and must stop immediately. Rangers must be properly trained as to the actual rules and must have oversight of rangers' activities and transparency in handling ranger complaints. According to the UT, you guys are working on revising your vending rules. I sincerely hope that those revised rules are in keeping and in spirit with state law. Otherwise, the situation may lead to litigation, which the city will likely lose. As a maker and a vendor with decades of experience, I would be happy to help in making better, more reasonable rules. Thank you.
Martin Stamper.
Hello everybody, my name is Fast Heart Martin Stamper. I was born with a heart condition that almost killed me as a kid. And I realized pretty young that I needed to live a life that I believed in. And for me, that's my highest calling is music. And I've been a musician since 1999, full time. I've been here in San Diego for 10 years. And one of the reasons I actually moved here is because the weather is conducive to playing music outdoors, where you're not stuck in a bar playing to drunk people who don't really care about music. And you can play outside. I play a lot of farmers markets, but I also play here at Balboa Park quite a bit. And for me, like many people have already said today, it's really impossible to play here without an amplification of some kind, unless you're playing a saxophone or something. But if you're a singer, any kind of singer, I think you're gonna need some kind of amplification. But I do see how there is a lot of performers out there that come along and abuse the situation, and they're way too loud, and they ruin it for everybody. And I think most of us are very reasonable. Most of us musicians who do play here, we don't want that. We don't want to play to a stadium. We want to play to passers-by. And we need to play in a place, though, where there are passers-by, because we do need to make a living. So I think if you think of it, these places that people want to sit and be isolated, that's going to be on the perimeter of the park. I mean, if you want isolation and beauty and stuff like that. But if you want the urban situation where the musicians are, they need to be in there. And we can work together. I've seen it for many years. I've played here. And until 2020, when things started getting a little bit crazy, and then now it's gotten completely crazy, things were going pretty good. And I can't help but think that all of this, since the pandemic occurred, I can't help but think that the clampdown on all of us now is that it has something to do with the New World Order wanting complete control, tyrannical control of humanity. They want to control every dime we make, every dime we spend, and who's spending it and where. And it's coming down to this. They know us artists are some of the last bastions of free employment out there, and they want to control us. And there's part of me that understands that, but part of me thinks it's wrong. I think we should all stand up to that. And we have to remember, a lot of people come from all over the world to Balboa Park to check out artists of the past and the present. And that's us musicians, us painters, artists of all kinds are here. And you have to also remember, some of us artists that are alive today may be in these museums in the future. So I think we need to all keep that in mind moving forward with this program. And I think it's kind of there's a lot of reasonable efforts going on here, but I think to say no amplification is kind of oversimplifying the situation. There has to be some kind of amplification for musicians. And I feel for artists of all kinds, as we know, industries of all kinds have been ruined by this pandemic, but other sources too. And artists are really being crunched right now. So please keep the activity policy open and let's work this out.
Thank you. So the next four slips have all conceded their time to William Dorsett. And that's Giuliotto, Mariotto, Adriana Robinson, and Sonia Duvall. They've all conceded their time to William Dorsett, so you have 15 minutes.
Hello, my name's William Dorsett. I'm an artist, I'm a busker, and I'm a First Amendment activist. I've been fighting for buskers' rights here in San Diego since about 2008. I've been busking here in San Diego since I moved here in 2004. I'm here again, standing up for First Amendment rights in our city. I stand here before you concerning a cause that is dear to me, and many people I know and do not know. I have lived through these same issues for almost 2 decades. Someone challenges a rule that violates First Amendment rights, the government abolishes said rule, and then big business always comes to take advantage of the lack of regulations. So the government decides to make more restrictive rules on First Amendment activities, only for there to be more pushback until said rule is abolished, and then the big business comes to take advantage of the lack of rules and regulations. I've seen this happen over and over and over again in the last couple of decades. Today is no different. I called out a rule that violates rights. The park abolishes said rule, the permit scheme. They abolished the rule, and then big business came and took advantage of the lack of regulations. This all could have been prevented had Parks and Rec and the city listened to my wisdom. Nearly 2 years ago, when I was in constant contact trying to end rights violations and prevent these scenarios from happening. Yet the work I put in was butchered by either the city or Parks and Rec or both. They put one half of what I was pushing for in the city code, leaving it unconstitutionally broad and creating a loophole for big business to take advantage of. Then they took the other half I wrote and put it in the Rangers Quick Reference Guidebook. To add insult to injury, the Rangers have not been properly trained to handle these new responsibilities, which result in them trespassing on a multitude of people's First Amendment rights and giving them way too much power. For this reason, I believe park rangers need to have some sort of citizens review board to generate some sort of oversight over the rangers. I also believe, based on the current agenda and concept for expressive activities, that the city and Parks and Rec really need to go back to the drawing board and look deeper into this issue. The designated areas are intrusive to free speech and definitely not the least restrictive means of regulations the city could create. The government may regulate time, place, and manner, but only if those regulations are the least intrusive and least restrictive means of regulations. And those regulations must be content neutral and leave ample open alternative channels for the speaker to reach their intended audiences. The current agenda, the way it is, will not pass the three-pronged test for time, place, manner restrictions, and it can easily be shot down in the court of law. The current agenda item is not the least restrictive means of regulations, and you're punishing First Amendment people for something big business has done. This doesn't bode well for Parks and Rec or for the city. There are civil rights attorneys on standby right now waiting to see how all of this plays out. You do not need regulations on free speech, you need regulations on big business. Back to the Rangers. They have way too much power, too little training, and the way they treat artists and buskers is as if they are all beneath them. Part of that is to blame on the Rangers Quick Reference Guide, which I will now read you a portion of. SDMC 360113. Any vendor and individual engaged solely in artistic performances, free speech, political or petitioning activities, or engaged solely in vending of items constituting expressive activity prohibited by the First Amendment, such as newspapers, leaflets, pamphlets, bumper stickers, or buttons, Art creates expressive materials all the time, an endless variety. These materials may express political or ideological affiliation, aspirations, attempts at persuasion, social, cultural commentary, religious devotion, righteousness, or even private assertions of identity, passion, and dread. Expression, commonly defined as an act, process, or instance, is a representation in medium, is broad enough to include a boisterous parade of thousands. Expressive activity can vary from the following items which have been created, written or composed by the individual: books, audio, video, or other recordings of their performances, paintings, photographs, prints, sculptures, or any other item that is inherently communicative and has a nominal value or utility apart from its communication. Although an item may have some expressive purpose, it will not be deemed to have more than nominal utility apart from its communication if it has a common and dominant non-expressive purpose. Examples are housewares, clothing, appliances, sunglasses, auto parts, oils, incense, perfumes, crystals, lotions, candles, toys, and stuffed animals. Time, place, manner restrictions are content-neutral limitations imposed by the government on expressive activity. Such restrictions come in many forms, such as imposing limits on noise level of vendors, capping the number of vendors who may occupy a given area, barring early or late evening vending, and restricting the size and placement of signs in government property. This is just one portion, but it clearly gives the Rangers an idea about busking in art with this line. Expression is commonly defined as an act, purpose, or instance that represents in the medium is broad enough to include both a boisterous parade of thousands. This line is an assumption that in all my years of busking has never occurred. Even when I try to get thousands to show up somewhere for a protest, at most 20 show up. Even at its peak, Balboa Park has never had thousands of expressive activities show up. It has, however, had dozens of big businesses turn up and drop off employees. The training and guidebooks for the Rangers put them in a precarious position. They're being told so many things in the guidebook and have very little training on these subjects. And so of course they're going to be confused. Of course they're going to step over laws and personal freedoms and make mistakes. Here's another line from the book. SDMC 63.0102, sales of merchandise. Sale of merchandise, except for those sales that are protected by the First Amendment. It's unlawful sell or trade any good, wares, merchandise, article, or thing without written consent of city manager. Except for those sales of First Amendment exceptions, most sales must conform to city manager's regulation. Then in the language, Penal Code 56.27, disorderly or offensive conduct in a public places are prohibited, that shall be and hereby declared to be unlawful for any person guilty of any offense or disorderly conduct in upon any of the streets, alleyways, sidewalks, squares, parks, or any store or public place in said city shall be unlawful. Any person make a loud noise, disturbance, use loud, noisy, boisterous, vulgar, or indecent language in any of the streets, alleyways, sidewalks, squares, park, or any store or public place in said city. This is so vague that someone could break wind, and if a ranger was annoyed by such an act, said ranger could write a citation for disorderly conduct. This municipal code was created in 1933 and was using Old English wording, which really shows the city should look into these codes and update them. That being said, language like this could easily confuse a ranger and give them a bit too much power over the public. Prime example is a ranger cited me for disorderly conduct because I called him a bully. Yes, the ranger won the lower court, but I have a pro bono attorney that is appealing it to higher courts because it was a First Amendment rights violation. This particular ranger has not only caused me a plethora of problems, but has been the bane of First Amendment protective activities for several years. Yet there has been little to no reprimand for his authoritarian actions. This whole situation has gotten way out of hand because of Parks and Rec and the city are being walked, and because of this, Parks and Rec and the city are being walked right into multiple lawsuits. Currently, Ari has a lawsuit on its hands because of a zealous ranger who thinks his authority is above the law. I urge you to work with expressive activities before you make things worse for us and yourselves. Stop trying to regulate us out of the park. We have better solutions. For example, stages along El Prado for busking. Walking with us so we can show you the best spots for each type of act and why they are necessary. Work with us so we can go over federal and state laws and show you who and what, how, why, and where we are protected. Working with us will ensure everyone comes up with viable solutions and that the least intrusive and restrictive means over First Amendment expressive activities. Working against this, and we will use every legal means necessary to shut you down the same way the Rangers shut us down. There is no busking without us. I would like to add one final little thing. There was a mention of ADA access, but we have several members of our group who are part of the ADA. They're mentally or physically disabled. Many of us have neurodivergences, make it almost impossible for us to get any other type of work. So over enforcing rules is putting us in a situation where we're going to be living in this campsite that y'all are building. So that's something you need to consider. And you need to consider who could be named in these lawsuits when one comes up. Is one of your names going to come up in this lawsuit because of the way you signed an ordinance? Think about those things when you're making a vote today. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you. So that concludes our speaker slips. Anyone on Zoom?
Nobody on Zoom.
Okay, great. Thank you. Any board member comments on this item? 201?
I didn't stop it.
Danielle?
Thank you. I have several for Head Ranger Ruiz. I heard this item at the park, Balboa Park Committee, and so I had time to think about the questions. The first one is, in Balboa Park there are a lot of protests. Sometimes there are sleep-ins or sit-ins when they're protesting in place and not moving through the park. Is any of that kind of activity covered in what you presented today?
Let me make it clear, I'm not an expert on all First Amendment aspects. That's why we are working with the City Attorney's Office. The current municipal code allows that type of activity to occur not only within the park, but also on the city streets. We often require large groups that are conducting these types of large protests, especially the ones who are going to be blocking traffic and large accesses like this, to reach out to the police department, which they do, and that way it allows us an opportunity to prepare and conduct various preparations, traffic control, crowd control, in order for that speech to get out while simultaneously maintaining health and safety for the public in the parks.
So I understand about the need for traffic control if they're moving on the public streets, but my question is more specific to the stationary type protests. In my personal experience, there was a sleep-in at the International Cottage Lawn over several days during the week, and one of the cottage's entry points was blocked with their equipment for food and packing up their tents during the daytime. So I was told that the protest is allowed, but I'm just wondering if there are places where they're not allowed and places where they are allowed as to the stationary type protests.
In regards to the expressive activity, that's why we are having these various locations throughout the park for someone to be stationary, and whether it be the weather, whether it be political speech, talking about whatever they choose to in those areas. If that's answering your question in regards to stationary places. As far as the sleep-ins that you spoke of, I unfortunately don't have any information on that, so I can't speak to it directly. But I am curious, and I can talk to you later about it to find out more history on it.
Thank you.
And I can follow up and get some background and be able to be better prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. This was an immigrant group that was protesting something internationally, and so they thought our spot was a good spot for it, and it was during the week when we weren't there. That's what so we'll follow up offline. Thank you.
Thank you.
My second question has to do with the every other weekend art mart that happens between the Oregon Pavilion parking lot and the International Cottages along Pan American Road East. They're there every other weekend and they sell beautiful art, but I'm wondering if this is the same type of activity that they would have to move to one of these designated locations, or are they going to be able to stay where the palm trees are between the Oregon Pavilion parking lot and the International Cottages?
The Art Mart is a very old SOP or special use permit within the park. I believe all SOPs are or special use permits are being reviewed and updated, and that particular one, as well as all the other ones, will be updated as we move forward.
Okay, I was not sure that they had an SUP, but thank you for that.
Yeah.
And then my last one is a follow-up to something that I heard a young lady ask about at the Balboa Park Committee, and the rangers that were present never really addressed it. And please don't take this as any offense, but why don't rangers wear body cameras like the San Diego Police Department does? Is there a rule that says that you don't have to? Or is there a rule that says that you can, but there is no financial means to supply the body cameras to the rangers?
I'm sure you're aware that there is not only body camera ordinance that came out, but video recording ordinance that's currently being reviewed, and there's a committee part of that. So any type of recording of the public would require that type of oversight. And currently, even though we've been around since 1989, our program, we finally reached a point where we are clarifying policies, procedures, and looking at ways where we can focus on not only enforcement, but really park rangers are here to also engage in habitat restoration, education, interpretive programs. So it could be a part of what we do and a part of our equipment, but our priority now is to focus on those aspects that we do every day: interpretation, education, resource management, and enforcement as needed.
I understand that enforcement is just one part of the pie, but as you go forward with these proposals, it would be good internally to talk about the possibility of body cameras for when you are enforcing, but not when you're doing all your other duties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other board member comment? Renee?
Thank you, Chief Ruiz. I too was at the Balboa Park Committee meeting, and I find so much of what I heard there and I hear today incredibly troubling for a host of different reasons. Since I can only suggest a referral for a working group to discuss this, let me go over some of the concerns that I have and just ask some questions. I'm sort of, the Yiddish word is verklempt at the moment. What happened to cause us to turn off the long-standing allowance of amplification in the recent past? Why was it allowed at one period and then relatively recently disallowed?
I have a very clear answer for you.
Thank you.
I began my career here as a park ranger in 1993. The entertainer program was initiated shortly thereafter, and amplification was not a part of that, and it hadn't been a part of that for many, many, many decades. As staff change, as a understanding of the history and the importance of maintaining the consistency of the entertainer program was less of a priority, amplification was more and more allowed. And to the point where after COVID, it really, you've heard from some of the entertainers and some of the individuals who are musicians, there is a lot of folks who are really creating an impact, a noise impact to the park, to visitors through their amplification. And we're certainly not opposed to it. We just want to make sure that there's a fine balance. You know, we have 15, 20 million visitors a year to Balboa Park. We have over 100-year-old buildings in Balboa Park. We want to make sure that we are keeping a balancing, providing an opportunity for artistic expression, music or otherwise, while simultaneously maintaining a cultural and historic balance. And that's the reason why we simply re-implemented what already existed, not only from the entertainer program, but also in the municipal code, based on complaints, based on the inability to be able to have an application within the park. That's why we are reaching out to the noise abatement group within the city to see how we can utilize their expertise to see where it can actually exist while still maintaining that cultural consistency within the park.
I understand that. Thank you. On every cell phone, you can get a sound meter app.
There you go.
Or you can buy a small sound meter. I guess my concern is in a lot of what I heard the other day, and a lot of the same people are here, so it may be duplicative, but a lot of what I heard here is the city decided it needed to change regulations and did not openly engage with the, let's call it the creative or expressive activity community.
There you go.
We've had several offers by people who have spoken here. I would suggest that a course is either for the city staff to reach out to the community that has been open here, or that the Park and Rec Board establish a working group to look into this meeting, this issue, and having just gone through 7 meetings on Deanza Cove, I'm not particularly interested in going through another 7 meetings on this topic, but I'm more than happy to, if that's what it takes, to see how we can get to a point where we can understand what it is that we're doing. When you started, you said, after today's meeting, we're going to start a 30-day education program. And as I pointed out, there are conflicts between the PowerPoint presentation and the staff report. There are concerns on the part of the community, and yet I don't quite understand what is going to start tomorrow for 30 days, what happens after the 30-day period, what the flow is between that and reaching out to the Mission Bay Park and the ocean communities that were here. I'm honestly at a loss as to where this stands and where it's going. So I'm just sort of pleading for some more information, insight as to where this is at and where it's going. The Ranger force has increased in size dramatically. The obligations for enforcement have increased dramatically, as you know much better than I do, over the last few years. You are in an incredibly difficult position, and I'm having a hard time figuring out how the board can be of assistance. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other board member comments?
Saying that, thank you, Mike, and we're gonna go on to.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna go on to item number 202,